evening, everyone. This is State Representative Brad Halbrook with my colleagues, Representative David Freese and Senator Andrew Chesney, along with the State Director of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Colin Mosley, as we recap last week's deadline week in the Illinois General Assembly. Welcome, gentlemen. Representative Freese, what's going on in your neighborhood?
Well, not much at the moment. It's glad to be back in district out of Springfield. The thought process is if I'm here in Redbud because the General Assembly is not in session, then that's a good day because there's no bad bills getting run.
That's exactly right. And Senator Chesney, has the snow melted up north, or are you guys still getting snow on the ground in the Northland?
No, it's a little cooler up here, but as our good friend David Freese correctly said, it's a sad thing in this state when the best thing you can do is adjourn because that means the bad has stopped. So it's certainly good to be back home around like-minded people rather than so many of those left-leaning goofballs. So good to be back, but also good to see all you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, good, gentlemen. And Director Mosley, boy, it was a busy week for you to keep all the trains running on time to help us in the Freedom Caucus to make sure that we were on the right path. But I'm sure that activity doesn't back off for you just because we're not in Springfield.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like disaster response cleanup when the General Assembly's been in for 5 days, 4 or 5 days. So lots to go over, lots to catch up on and get ready for next week.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so let's get back into our slide set here and kind of talk about what happened last week. And we're going to kind of recap 600 bill passage, and we will have a lengthy program, I'm sure, sometime soon about all the reform measures that were passed to make life better for Illinois citizens. Gentlemen, if we were to have a program about all the reform measures that were passed to make life better for Illinoisans, how long would that program be, do you think? Maybe, 3-4 minutes?
Well, we might not even have a program.
Sad but true. So with that, let's put the fun and frivolity behind and get to the meat of the matter. Last week, reading bill deadline. I'll get it in a second. So House bills needed to get out of the House. Senate bills needed to get out of the Senate. And then the process starts all over as those bills make their opposite chambers. So Representative Freese, kind of give us your take on what happened in the House. And then we'll go to Senator Chesney to talk about what happened in the Senate there briefly. And then we'll get into talking about a few big bills that happened in addition.
Oh, it was a busy week, actually. I mean, we were having committee hearings at 8 o'clock in the morning. We would then get on the floor at noon, run a bunch of bills, vote on them up or down, obviously. And then sometimes we were even having the committee hearings after we adjourned 5 or 6 o'clock. Many nights we went till 10 o'clock at night. So like I said, it was a busy time. Maybe not very fruitful from our perspective, but no, they moved a bunch of bills and got some work done.
Yeah. I think the first 3 days we were on the floor for about 6 hours each. Thursday was about a 12-hour day, 70 plus bills each of the first 3 days. Thursday, I think we may be 115 bills or something. It was a pretty big number to ultimately get to about 379 or 380, something like that, I think, out of the House.
Yeah. If you're on a appropriations committee, those went long.
Yeah.
Those individuals, God bless them, they had some long days.
Yeah, exactly. Senator Chesney, what was life in the Senate this past week during deadline time?
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Pretty quiet, for the most part. I mean, there was clearly some bills that I disagreed with. We're going to get into bills either this week or the next couple of weeks related to Second Amendment rights and the way that you can carry cannabis in the state. But for the most part, pretty quiet. The Senate is, very proud to say that they're the adults in the room, but you see some of these bills that go out and I don't see a lot of adulting. From an intensity standpoint or the volume standpoint, you're going to see significantly fewer bills that pass out of the Senate. They don't have that rule of 5 where each member can get their 5 best bills or their view of the best bills that they want or priority bills. They don't have such rules in the Senate. There was, I'm sure, a few bills that were just okay, largely agency bills, largely cleanup bills,
Mhm.
but I didn't see significant stuff. There was a few things that gave me some concern, but a lot of the attention, of course, was in the House.
Yeah, exactly. And Director Colin, 2 weeks ago, the Speaker put out a memo that we were to prioritize our top 5 bills. This was both for Democrats and Republicans. And the way it started out the week and stayed with it through the week is they went through the alphabet or through the roster alphabetically. Each person got to do their bill. And of course, what we saw at the end of the week was, I think it was 82% of the bills were Democrat bills that got passed. 18% of the bills were Republican bills that got passed. But what we saw is the Democrats are loaded up with so many bills that they got moved through committee. A lot of sponsorships changed hands, and some bills were given to maybe freshman Democrats, or maybe even did a Republican or two pick up some of those Democrat bills. What happened there as we get into the next slide?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. That was the idea. I think you're being generous at 18%. Maybe it is around there, which just goes to show you that you hear the term sometimes good faith agreement with the Speaker's office. There is no good faith agreements in Springfield. They will happily show up and do business without the Republicans if they have to. So yeah, I mean, they're in the House, for example. We make up nearly just over a third of
Right.
the House chamber, and yet we didn't get more than 18% of bills called. And yes, you saw bills moving around, people taking things, getting creative in order to shove more bad legislation through. But it's just sad. It's really disappointing. This Speaker's office is absolutely not going to call a bill from anybody that gives them any political advantage. And I would say of the 18% of bills that were called from Republicans, probably 80% of them are district projects or personal initiatives. There's absolutely no major reform taking place.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go to our next slide and top off while you're there. I think we're going to talk about the homeschool. I know Representatives Niemerg and Wilhauer are on this committee. This bill got heard, I believe it was Wednesday morning. There was an amendment. Colin, you were there. What happened with the homeschool bill on Wednesday and then ultimately Friday morning, if you want to recap that for us?
Well, what happened is that the Democrats that claim to care so much about democracy continue to prove that they don't. Hundreds of over 100,000 now total witness slips on this bill as it's moved through the General Assembly process, and amendment was heard in the committee. They subbed out Democrat Katie Stewart from the Metro East. Even though she was in the room, she came in the room and said hi, but she subbed out of the committee. They subbed out Fred Kretzpo, who voted present last time. And, they totally they insulted the witnesses that came and testified about how this bill will impact their community. African-American family from Chicagoland that discussed how this will impact their community. And, the sponsor, Tara Costa Howard, just continues to produce the vitriol against homeschool families, because ultimately I think it's her belief the government knows how to parent better than parents.
Right. Exactly. Of course, the bill came to the floor Friday morning. We got wind Friday morning that they were just going to adopt the amendment, move it to third, and not vote on it. Now, Colin, there was a vote, though. What was that about? That was something about the fiscal notes? There was a vote to that extent?
Yeah, there were notes that were filed, and the whole notes thing, we could have a whole live stream on the Notes Act, but members filed fiscal notes and impact notes to try to figure out what the impact of this bill is. The fiscal note actually came back, and a lot of the costs are unknown. But the other notes requested, there was a vote to waive the Notes Act after Tara Costa Howard went on a rampage. And so that's where the bill stands. The notes were ruled inapplicable, and the bill's on third reading.
Exactly. All right, let's get into another big hot subject, a hot button subject, if you will. The mascot, the war on mascots, if you will, across the state of Illinois. And Representative Freeze, you want to speak to what this was all about? What's going on here?
You would love to, because again, this is going to affect my district. This is going to affect probably every state rep in the state of Illinois. I guarantee it. There's a Native American mascot in every district, and they deem these mascots demeaning, inappropriate, and it's not so much the Native American headdress or anything. It's lots of stuff that deal with Native Americans: spears with feathers, arrowheads. It really got goofy. And they said, well, you can have this mascot up until 2029, I believe it is. And you're going to have to make changes between now and then if there's upgrades. And they're like, well, you're going to get new uniforms in the next couple of years anyway, so it's not a big deal. But every mascot that I have in my district, it's very honorable, very respectful. It's not demeaning. The rep that ran this put up caricatures from 40, 50 years ago. It's not like that today. It's really it's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Colin and I had a conversation earlier today. This same bill, this rep lives up in Rockford. He should run a bill that would ban professional teams from having mascots. I wonder how the Chicago Blackhawks would react to that bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And a little bit of the debate got into, the different landmarks, if you will, the different communities, the rivers, the state of Illinois. Illinois is a Native American name. And so are we going to continue to change all of these names? What's going to happen with that? And I don't know exactly how the sponsor responded to that, other than that really wasn't his interest. It was just about the school mascots.
Yeah, and this is the same guy that ran the bill to ban the Freeburg Midgets, which is not in my district, but is probably 20, 25 minutes away from where I live. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a history behind that mascot, why it got brought in. Again, very respectful. They're proud of their mascot, but it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what this particular representative out of the Chicago area thinks. He's going to impose his will on the entirety of the state, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, we're starting to see more and more people reach outside their district into other people's districts too and run bills. I think that's a serious problem. They already have the majority, but you guys are elected to serve your territories, and it shouldn't be on Maurice West and Rockford to tell a school board in the Metro East what they can and can't do with their sports teams. But that's where we're at. And we've seen lots of these bills.
Right. Yeah. And not to jump off the slides, but to that point is, Republicans are in all 102 counties, either partially or all of that. I mean, when you get outside of Cook and the Colors, majority of these counties are fully Republican, both House and Senate. But yet they want to run bills. The Democrats want to run bills that affect us in our respective areas. But yet we can't run our own bills for whatever reason to help improve life for the citizens in those districts. I think it's just bizarre. Senator Chesney, do you see that in the Senate? I mean, do these bills get over there? Do you see that or other bills in the Senate similarly?
Well, we don't see quite the intensity that you see in the House, and there's plenty of bad bills that I'm going to vote no on and have voted no on in the Senate. The mascot bill is, again, another bizarre, another woke, part of this whole cancel culture. Representative Maurice West, lives in an area that the average child can't read and write. You have, record high crime rates, record high property taxes, and he wants to go through our communities and start tearing apart our mascots in schools that are certainly performing better than his. Even if we disagree with many of the things, we should at least agree that the numbers matter and the data matters, and our data far exceeds what he's been able to produce in his communities. But this is just a continuation of what the Democrats want to do. They want to tear apart our communities. They want to tear apart, families, and mascots have a lot of value, especially in our smaller communities. And there's a lot of nostalgia and there's a lot of connection to our very small communities. And you get these suburban or you get these urban type legislators that just want to come in and get some fancy headlines. And then of course you get the goofballs in the Chicagoland area that just want to pile on because it sounds good. And they're really just trying to, address issues that don't exist when they really should be looking at the property tax problems that they have, the population losses. And, if they take a look at their own public schools, they're very, they're just not performing where they should.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Senator Chesney, there was an important cannabis bill that is in the Senate. It made it through out of deadline. Can you speak to that while you're there?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Democrats believe that you should be impaired, or it's okay to be impaired and drive, and they really want, this is kind of the cover up, right? And so we got to stop using the word cannabis. Let's start calling it weed or pot. They've started to change their wording to make it sound like it's less of a drug, right? These folks must have not have attended DARE when they were kids, but this is just, they have a separate standard. They're of the belief that there's people that are using this product, abusing this product, that are getting caught and getting in trouble. And so this is a way for them to tweak a rule and tweak a law that allows for more people to be impaired on our roads and make it almost impossibly to prove. So very simple. They can't use odor of weed as the only source to look into a vehicle, but you can do that for alcohol. So if they suspect that you have an impaired driver, they can they can search that vehicle, but you can't do the same thing for weed. And just going to make our streets less safe. I know why they're doing it is because they want to cover up how many accidents are occurring as a result of pot. And they said this was a safe product and that people are using it anyways, but actually it's not a safe product and many people are getting hurt. And this is a way for them to cover up that data.
Right, exactly. Gentlemen, we kind of skipped over the third bullet there about the new chemical abortion bill that would allow this process to move forward without FDA approval. Representing Freeze or Colin, I don't know if either one of you gentlemen want to talk about that bill that moved through the House.
Well, this was an interesting debate. So we've actually have physicians on our side of the aisle, and I think it was Rep. Powder that got up and spoke about this. This drug's not even approved by the FDA, but here in Illinois, if it's pushes abortion in any form or fashion, the Democrats are all over it. Been thinking about this. It's like they're the party of death. It's really sad that we've come to this. We've got a medication, a pill that's not approved by the FDA, but because it will help facilitate more abortions. Well, then, yeah, we're going to approve that. It's sick.
Right. Exactly. All right, Director Colin, let's go to the next slide and let's talk about some other maybe bright spots that happened in the General Assembly this week. Yeah, so there was a bill that had quite a bit of debate, Democrat bill that would allow murderers out of prison easier. Didn't get the required number of votes. It was kind of an interesting bill. David, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, real quick, it was interesting. So I don't do criminal law, but talking to these people that do criminal law in our caucus, if you're going to get a life sentence and you're young, it had to be a horrific murder. And the other thing that this doesn't talk about, not only murders, but individuals that created or committed sexual assault. I mean, just in talking to these individuals, it would have to be multiple counts, multiple occasions. So these were just animals. We do not want these people out on our streets. And this lady, she ran the bill, didn't have the requisite 60 number of votes. And I heard some Democrats after this debate saying that she actually misrepresented to her caucus that she had 60 votes, which I was surprised because that's their rule, is you don't get to call a bill unless you've got 60 votes.
And she's a leader.
Yeah. So it was listening to the Democrats talk about this after that vote was fascinating because, again, not sure what's driving this. I know there's a big push on, criminal justice reform and restorative justice and all that stuff, but to advocate for murderers and child predators to be released back into our society is just, again, strange. Don't understand it, but this is where we're at with the Democrat Party.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
They never talk about the victims. You ever notice that? They never talk about the victims. They never talk about the people whose lives have been torn apart from these jerks. And all they want to talk about is all these, fancy academic words that make a murder sound less like a murder, which is just should be offensive to everybody.
Yeah,
Exactly.
justice impacted individual.
I think it's all part
Yeah,
of
there you go. That was one.
the relentless pursuit also to dehumanize this stuff. To your point, I mean, this is what they do on abortion. This is what they do on murder. They don't want to hear about the victims or the people that have been affected. And I think that John Cabello said on the floor when this bill was passed, and if I was there, I would have said similar comments. These are people, the people that voted for this bill have probably likely never had to deal with investigating a murder or a murder victim or their families. I mean, I can tell you personally, as someone who works in law enforcement and as a deputy coroner, guys, I've seen murder victims. I've seen what their bodies look like after people are done with them. And I've been in the room when families found out that their loved one has been murdered. And it's terrible. And I think if we put these 50 Democrats in an autopsy room, as we pulled out, 17 bullets from someone's abdomen, they might feel differently about this bill. But it's people over there that it's all emotion with these people. They don't know anything. It sounds good on paper. It fits their restorative justice narrative. And they've never been inside of a squad car, never been in an autopsy room, and never had to make a hard decision. And so I'm thankful to the 20 Democrats that didn't put their name on this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think Windhorse was right. He said this bill was going to have to allow or force those victims to relive that event, because then they would have to go to a parole board hearing or something and argue that, no, this person should not be back out in our streets. So they were going to have to relive that again and again and again. It's sad.
Yeah, exactly. Senator Chesney, late last May, we saw the CO2 bill, the carbon capture and sequestration bill. I know I spoke to it on the House floor. I'm sure Senator Rose and others in the Senate talked about the Muhammad Aquifer, and we were told that there was nothing to be concerned about when it comes to protecting the Muhammad Aquifer. However, what did they do this spring is they're running a bill to protect the Muhammad Aquifer from this carbon sequestration situation. Senator Chesney, you want to kind of give us a highlight what happened in the Senate as this bill moved through there?
Well, it was, the Democrats do a very good job of creating problems and then patting themselves on the back for coming up with solutions, right? So they almost are the arsonist and the firefighter at the same time, right? So they create these problems and then they want to applaud themselves for fixing the problems that their legislation created. And so, this aquifer, through these and water contamination was created out of green energy. And now it's of course, allegedly going to be fixed as a result of this legislation. But Senator Rose took a great lead on that. But this is one thing that the listeners and the viewers need to understand. While Senator Rose was the most outspoken on the Senate side on this issue, they didn't give him the bill, right? And they give it to a Democrat. And so, the idea that when you see senators that are on our side of the aisle pushing through legislation, any of the really big stuff, they always take from us and give to the Democrats. So they'll give us agency bills, some district, specific stuff, a few little minor tweaks, but anything massive, anything that's what I call a lift, with very few exceptions, the Republicans don't get the crack at it. And that's by design. So, but in this case, appears to be very positive. I learned more about the issue. For those that are in central and southern Illinois, know more about this and the impact that it's had. But I think it's correctly put on our slides as a bright spot at the session.
Yeah, exactly. Gentlemen, we've talked about the homeschool bill, but it's not over, right? Just because it missed the deadline Friday, nothing really ever dies in Springfield. What's the chances that we could see this language emerge maybe later this spring as an amendment to another bill maybe? What's the chances? What do you gentlemen think about how we need to stay plugged into the process, or everybody out there that's watching us, stay plugged in the process and be vigilant about what may happen with this homeschool bill?
Yeah, I fully expect to see a gut and replace somewhere along the line, given the fervor in which this was debated and pushed, I can see this ending up on our table somewhere down in the future. It's unfortunate it didn't die, but as you mentioned, bad bills in Springfield don't die; they just get passed on. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if bills get extension deadlines extended. We'll probably see a few of those. I know this bill already on Friday afternoon had been re-referred to rules. I don't know if there's any bills that did get their deadlines extended or not, but there's always, you got to be wary and just, it didn't go away. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, Senator Chesney, I think you saw in the Senate some bad gun legislation. Anything that you want to speak to there as far as any highlights or lowlights as far as 2A and gun stuff in the Senate?
Yeah, it was Senate Bill 6. We actually had a couple of Republicans support it. They think for some reason that's going to help them in their district, which obviously I don't agree with that. It's going to make it, there's going to be more damages and, more perhaps criminal penalties on law-abiding gun owners if they fail to secure their firearms under certain situations. It has to do with, essentially who would have access to them, and also different reporting requirements. Senate Bill 8, excuse me, and different reporting requirements if a gun is lost or stolen. And so again, they focus, many times on symptoms, not problems. They do this every cycle. You see upticks in criminal activity as a result of the legal immigration that Governor Pritzker has allowed in her state. They are creating a lot of havoc, and so they want to point to things that they're trying to point at a shiny object somewhere else to take the intensity and the focus off of what's really the issue. And this would be a great example of this. Nobody's really asking for this other than just a couple of progressive nut jobs and some industry people that just hate guns and firearms altogether. But is this going to make you more safe? Absolutely not. A lot like the assault weapon ban, this is going to put a lot of law-abiding gun owners, in situations where they could lose their FOID cards, where they could lose their Second Amendment rights, or have to spend a lot of money to restore them. So bad bill. Again, still had a couple of Republicans support it. I was surprised, normally in these cases, at least on the Senate, we would have 5 or 6 Republicans support this type of stuff. I think we only had a couple, still in my view, too many, but we are starting to see at least some unity and a realignment on these issues and a better focus on it.
Right. Exactly. Gentlemen, before we close out, is there any last things on that slide, or let's just go right into our closing slide? Representative, I'm sorry, I promoted you there, Director Mosley, all of a sudden.
Well, thanks, Brad. I was worried that Leader Willhauer had abandoned us or something there. So, no, just, on the closing slide, all this stuff we talked about, we try to do our best to keep you updated. We're out this week, back next week. Or at least the House is anyway. The Senate, I think, it gets an extended vacation, upper chamber, but they're back the week after. But here's our website, our Substack. I've got to get a Substack out here today or tomorrow. But there's a lot going on, and we're there fighting for you every day and trying to promote conservative values in Springfield.
Exactly. With that, gentlemen, maybe we'll just say good night. And again, we always appreciate you tuning in, and we always would like you to share or follow, subscribe to our content to help us overcome the big tech overlords, algorithmic gods. I kind of got that reversed, but I think everybody understands what that's about. It's really, really important that you help us to get our content out and help fan the flames of conservatism across the state and across the region. Gentlemen, unless you have anything else to say, maybe we'll just close out for the evening and say good night.
Good night.